The first mistake Caleb Reyes made was thinking Judge Frank Caprio's courtroom was just another room. He slouched beside his mother, dragged his sneakers, and whispered, "Can we go?" This is boring, as if he were waiting for recess. Not a ruling that could crush his mom's last bit of breathing room. Monica Reyes tightened her grip on her folder of overdue bills and hospital pay stubs, silently begging him to stop. Caleb didn't care. He pulled out his phone, scrolled, chuckled at a video while the clerk read their case aloud. Then Judge Caprio looked up. The warmth people knew from television vanished from his eyes. "Young man," he said slowly, "I am speaking to your mother." Caleb shrugged without looking up. He had no idea that in the next few minutes, this boring courtroom would strip away every illusion he had about money, loyalty, and what it really means when someone shows up for you. Before we see what happened to Caleb, tell us in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is right now. And if you love powerful real-life court stories, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the verdict. The clerk, Ms. Harper, adjusted her glasses and cleared her throat, her voice echoing through the chamber with practiced authority. Case number 2417 PK2231. City of Providence versus Monica Reyes. Charges: 3 unpaid parking citations and an expired vehicle registration. Monica stepped forward. Up close, the exhaustion etched into her face became unmistakable. Dark circles beneath her eyes, hair tied back in a work bun that had clearly survived a 12-hour hospital shift. Her scrubs peeked out beneath a fading winter jacket. She clutched a folder stuffed with papers, the way some people clutched life preservers. Behind her came Caleb, 11 years old, designer hoodie, neon sneakers, and a phone that cost more than Monica made in 2 shifts. He wasn't embarrassed. He wasn't worried. He barely even looked like he belonged to her. He was glancing around the courtroom like it was an airport lounge he didn't want to be in. Ms. Harper continued reading the charges. Citation 1. Parking meter expired near Knight Street, October 4th. Citation 2. Downtown Providence, October 11th. Citation 3. Medical District, October 19th. Total fines, $465. Additional penalty for expired registration, $135. Caleb scoffed under his breath. That's nothing. Dad could have paid that yesterday. The words hit Monica like a slap. Her shoulders tensed. Judge Caprio's pen paused mid-stroke. For a moment, even the fluorescent lights buzzing above seemed to hold their breath. "Miss Reyes," the judge said softly. "How do you plead?" Monica swallowed. "Guilty, Your Honor. I know the registration is overdue." "I've been trying to." Caleb cut in, louder this time. "Dad would have handled all this already. He doesn't let stuff pile up." The courtroom fell dead silent. A security officer raised an eyebrow. Someone in the gallery shifted uncomfortably. You didn't need a law degree to know this child had just crossed a line. Judge Caprio lifted his eyes. "Young man," he said, calm but firm, "your mother is speaking." Caleb didn't even look up from his phone. "I'm just telling the truth." Narrator, as if addressing the audience through the lens. Some days, Judge Caprio settles tickets. Other days, he settles families. Today was going to be one of those days. The judge turned gently back to Monica. "Let's start from the beginning. Tell me what happened." Monica breathed in slowly, steadying her voice. "Your Honor, I work as a CNA at Providence General, mostly night shifts. Sometimes double shifts. My car failed inspection in July. The repair estimate was over $800. I didn't have it. So I kept driving because I need the car for work. If I lose the job," her voice faltered. She didn't need to finish. Everyone knew what came next. Lose the job, lose the rent, lose everything. "And the parking tickets?" Caprio asked. "I parked near the hospital. I thought the meters were free after 6. Turns out they weren't." Caleb muttered loud enough for the first row to hear, "Because she never reads anything." A tiny groan of disapproval rippled through the courtroom. Monica's face flushed with humiliation. She kept her eyes on the floor. "Caleb," Judge Caprio said, voice lowering into that dangerous calm. "You will not speak to your mother like that in my courtroom. Do you understand?" Caleb shrugged without lifting his gaze. "I'm just saying what's true," Monica whispered urgently. "Caleb, stop." But the boy wasn't listening to her. He wasn't used to listening to anyone but the voice in his pocket or the one on alternate weekends. Caprio leaned forward. "Miss Reyes, is Caleb's father involved?" Monica tried to steady herself. "Not really, Your Honor. He hasn't paid child support in 5 months. Owes around $4,200. Visitation. Every other weekend when he shows up." The judge's brow tightened with concern. "And what does he say about you when he does show up?" Monica hesitated. Pain flickered across her face. "I don't want to say, Your Honor. Not in front of him." But Caleb spoke up instead, proudly, almost triumphantly. "Dad says she comes to court because she likes drama. Says she could afford stuff if she didn't waste money. He says she shouldn't try to make him pay child support if she can't manage what she has." A quiet gasp rose from someone seated behind them. Even Ms. Harper looked up from her file. Judge Caprio slowly set his pen down. "And you believe everything your father tells you?" Caleb shrugged again, still scrolling. "He's not wrong. Mom's always broke. Dad buys me stuff. Shoes, my phone, my game console. He actually takes care of me." "Does he contribute to the household?" the judge asked. "He says he doesn't have to. He says Mom can't make him." Monica closed her eyes, humiliated beyond words. Her lip trembled as she fought to stay composed. Narrator quietly to the audience. "There are 2 kinds of parents. The ones who show up and the ones who show off. And sometimes, a courtroom is the only place that reveals the difference." Suddenly, Caleb's phone buzzed loudly, an obnoxiously cheerful ringtone piercing the tension like a needle. He lit up instantly. "That's Dad." Judge Caprio straightened. "You will not answer that phone." But Caleb was already raising it to his ear. "Yeah, Dad. We're in court. Mom's acting like she can't afford tickets again." Monica reached for the phone, panicked. "Caleb, stop. End the call." Judge Caprio's voice cracked like a whip. "Caleb, end that call and hand the phone to Officer Grant." Caleb jerked his hand away from his mother. "You can't take my phone." "Dad said judges can't take private property." Grant stepped forward, hands open. Not aggressive, just ready. Caleb backed away like a cornered cat. "Caleb," Monica whispered, "please don't do this. My dad said I don't have to listen. Officer Grant didn't chase him, didn't raise his voice. He just waited." But the silence was loud. Oppressively loud. Courtroom heavy, loud. Judge Caprio leaned forward, voice low and edged. "Caleb Reyes, you have 2 choices. Hand Officer Grant the phone, or you will be escorted out of this courtroom, and your mother will continue without you. Which do you prefer?" Caleb looked around at the bailiff, the judge, the gallery, his mother, everyone staring. His bravado began cracking. For the first time since he entered that courtroom, the consequences reached him. He stepped forward and surrendered the phone. Officer Grant powered it off, placed it on the clerk's desk. Caleb's shoulders slumped. His hands shook slightly. "Caleb," the judge said quietly, "sit in the gallery. Do not speak unless I ask you a question. Do you understand?" Caleb nodded, barely audible. "Yes." "What was that?" He forced himself to look up. "Yes, Your Honor." He walked to the back row and sat. The arrogance drained from him like water from a cracked bottle. Judge Caprio turned back to Monica. His tone softened. "Miss Reyes, you came here to resolve citations, not to be humiliated by your child. You don't deserve that." Monica covered her eyes. Tears slipped through her fingers. "I don't know what to do anymore," she whispered. "You're doing what you can," the judge said. "Let's address your tickets first." He opened the file again as the courtroom settled. But the real case, the one no docket number could capture, was just beginning. Judge Caprio took a moment before speaking again, letting the tension settle like dust in a shaft of courtroom sunlight. The gallery was still uneasy. People shifted, glanced at Caleb in the back row, then at Monica, who stood fragile, and trembling at the podium. It was the kind of uneasy silence that comes right before a storm breaks. "Miss Reyes," the judge began gently, "I want to understand your situation fully. Let's talk through these citations." Monica nodded, wiping under her eyes quickly, as if afraid that acknowledging her own tears would make them spill faster. "Yes, Your Honor." The judge lifted the first citation from the file, tapping its corner lightly on the bench. "October 4th. Meter expired near Knight Street." "What happened that day?" Monica exhaled. "I had a double shift. One of the night nurses called out sick, so I stayed longer. By the time I got out, the meter was long expired. I didn't even remember I'd parked there until I saw the ticket." "And the second?" "Same area. I was covering an early morning shift. I think the enforcement officer must do rounds right when I'm clocking in or just starting on the floor." "And the third citation, medical district?" "That was after picking up medication for a patient who couldn't get it delivered," Monica said. "I left my car in a 15-minute zone. I thought I'd be back in 10. It took 30. Behind her, someone murmured sympathetically. It wasn't pity, it was recognition. Providence was full of people who lived mile to mile, paycheck to paycheck, moment to moment. Judge Caprio nodded slowly. "Thank you, Miss Reyes." But he wasn't done. He signaled toward the corner of the courtroom. "Officer Daniels, please approach." A uniformed parking enforcement officer, mid-40s, calm, composed, stepped forward. His shoes clicked softly on the polished floor. He carried himself like someone used to confrontation but also used to compassion. "Officer," Caprio began, "you issued these citations?" "Yes, Your Honor." "Do you recall this particular vehicle?" Daniels paused, thinking. "Yes, actually. The silver Corolla with the cracked taillight but a clean interior. I remember checking the inspection sticker valid until July at the time." Monica lowered her head. Her car was her pride and her embarrassment at once. Did the vehicle appear abandoned, neglected, anything that suggested disregard? "No, sir," Daniels replied. "It looked like a working person's car, parked in legitimate spots. Just expired meters, the kind of thing I see all the time near hospitals. And the driver. I didn't see her. I only ticketed based on meter timelines." The judge nodded again, thoughtful. "Thank you, officer." Daniel stepped back. The judge turned his full attention to Monica, his voice shifting, firmer now, but still steady. "Miss Reyes, you've been honest, straightforward, and respectful. That matters." Monica's eyes glistened. But before the judge could continue, a faint sound interrupted, barely audible, but enough to stir nerves in the gallery. It was Caleb. He was sitting in the back row, elbows on his knees, hands pressed to his temples. His face was pale, lips tight, eyes darting between his mother and the judge. He wasn't crying, but something inside him had cracked. The courtroom wasn't recess anymore, and the weight of what he'd said earlier was catching up with him. Judge Caprio noticed. He let a beat pass, then returned to the matter at hand. "Miss Reyes, your total fines amount to $600 after penalties. But I am not going to punish you for choosing to keep your job, support your son, and survive. I'll reduce the fines significantly once we address the more pressing issue." Monica nodded. "Thank you, Your Honor." But the judge wasn't looking at her anymore. He was staring past her, at the boy in the back row, the boy who had spent the entire morning treating his mother like she owed him apologies for being tired, broke, and human. "Caleb," the judge said, his voice carrying power without volume, "come forward." A ripple went through the room. Caleb froze. He looked at his mother. She gently motioned him toward the podium. He rose slowly, head bowed, the swagger gone, the phone gone, the shield gone. He approached the front of the courtroom and stood beside his mother, arms stiff at his sides. The judge folded his hands. "Caleb, do you understand why you were asked to sit in the gallery?" Caleb shrugged, then corrected himself immediately as the judge's eyebrows lifted. Because I interrupted." "You didn't just interrupt," the judge said. "You spoke to your mother with disrespect. You answered a phone call in a courtroom. You repeated insults that should never have reached your ears to begin with. And you behaved as though responsibility falls on everyone but yourself. Caleb swallowed. His voice came out small. I wasn't trying to be bad. I didn't say you were bad, the judge replied. But you made bad choices. Hurtful choices. And you made them in front of strangers who didn't deserve to witness your family's private struggles. Monica's eyes filled again, but this time with something different. Relief, maybe. Gratitude, the feeling of someone finally stepping in to help her carry a burden she'd been holding alone. Judge Caprio leaned closer. Caleb, look at your mother. Caleb hesitated. Then he turned toward her. Tell her what you said in this courtroom. Caleb's lower lip trembled. I said she was broke. Louder, the judge instructed. Caleb's voice cracked. I said she was broke. What else? I said Dad would have paid everything. I said she doesn't read signs. I said she likes drama. And? The judge pressed. Caleb looked at the floor, and I answered the phone. I embarrassed her. A quiet moment passed. Monica covered her mouth, shoulders trembling. Now tell her what's true, the judge said. Caleb blinked rapidly as tears finally spilled. Mom's not the broke one. She's the one who takes care of everything. She works all the time. She buys food. She pays bills. She gets me to school. She's the one who shows up. Silence fell like snowfall, soft but unforgettable. Narrator quietly to the audience. Sometimes a courtroom isn't about guilt or innocence. Sometimes it's about clarity. And clarity for an 11-year-old can feel like a verdict. Caleb wiped his face. His voice steadied just barely. I'm sorry, Mom, for everything. I didn't mean to hurt you like that. Monica pulled him close. Caleb didn't resist. He melted into her, burying his face into her shoulder. The judge waited. He always waited for the hug. It was part of the healing. When they separated, Caprio spoke to Caleb with a voice that was equal parts stern and merciful. Young man, apologies matter, but corrective action matters more, and today we begin both. He reached for a form on his desk, sliding it into view. Caleb's eyes widened when he saw his own name at the top. This, the judge said, is your new assignment. 30 hours of community service at the Elmwood Senior Community Center. Saturday mornings 9 to noon for 10 weeks. Caleb's mouth fell open. But I have basketball, and your mother has responsibilities she never complains about, the judge replied. You'll learn from her example. Caleb's breath hitched. My dad won't let you. The judge cut him off gently but firmly. Your father is not the one raising you. Influence is a form of custody, Caleb, and your father's influence has pushed you in the wrong direction. My job is to correct that path before it becomes permanent. The words hung in the air like a gavel frozen in mid-drop. Monica wiped her face again. Caleb stared at the paperwork, as if it were a sentence etched in stone. Judge Caprio softened. Just a degree. This isn't punishment. It's education. And you will thank me later. I promise you that. Caleb's shoulders sagged. Yes, Your Honor. And one more thing, Caprio said, signaling to Ms. Harper. She lifted Caleb's phone from the desk. The judge turned to Monica. From this moment forward, his phone is your property. You will decide when he gets it back. Caleb's mouth fell open, but this time he didn't protest. Something deeper than anger had taken hold. Humility, maybe. Or the first fragile thread of understanding. Judge Caprio lifted his gavel. This court will continue shortly, he said, but for now, we breathe. And for the first time since they'd entered the room, Monica allowed herself to breathe. For a long moment, no one in the courtroom moved. The echo of the gavel faded, leaving behind a tension that was less fear and more possibility. The kind of stillness that comes after a storm passes, when everyone checks the sky to see whether the sun or another wave of thunder will break through next. Judge Caprio took a quiet sip of water, then gestured to Ms. Harper. Let's continue. Monica straightened, still holding Caleb by the shoulders. Her hands trembled, but her breathing had steadied. There was something different in her eyes now, something like relief wrapped in exhaustion. She looked for the first time that day like someone who wasn't standing alone. Caprio reopened the file. Miss Reyes, before I finalize any decision about your fines, I want to hear more about your circumstances. Monica nodded. Of course, Your Honor. He flipped to the inspection record. You said your car failed inspection in July. What needed repair? The brakes, she said quietly, and the suspension. The quote was $820. I only had $400 saved. Then my daughters. Ari, Caleb's sister, got sick. Needed antibiotics, multiple visits. I had to choose. Caprio looked up. Between repairing the car and caring for your child? Yes, Your Honor. And you chose your child. Monica's voice wavered. Always. Narrator, softly to the audience. Some decisions look irresponsible on paper, but on a mother's heart, they're the only decisions possible. The judge leaned back. Miss Reyes, how many hours do you work per week? 48 to 60 depending on staffing. Sometimes more when someone quits or calls out. And you're a CNA? Yes, sir. In the rehab and geriatric unit. Not an easy job, Caprio murmured. No, Your Honor, but I love my patients. Caleb, standing beside her, glanced up for the first time since being called forward. His mother's words hit him in a place he hadn't explored before, somewhere beneath the layer of entitlement and mimicry of his father's bravado. He looked at her scrubs peeking out from under her jacket, the fading hospital badge clipped to her pocket, the slight stains of antiseptic she hadn't yet washed out. He saw work. Real work. Judge Caprio turned to the staff table. Officer Daniels, please return. The parking officer stepped up again. Officer, the judge said, I have a question unrelated to the legality of the citations. In your rounds near Providence General, do you ticket many hospital workers? Daniel sighed lightly. More than I'd like, Your Honor. Nurses, CNAs, techs. They're often rushing in or out. Shifts don't line up well with meter schedules. Half the time they barely have time to breathe, much less track a meter. And do you believe Miss Reyes was abusing parking rules? Not at all, sir. Her car was always in a safe spot. Just slightly over time. Caprio nodded thoughtfully and dismissed the officer with a grateful gesture. Then he turned back to Monica. Miss Reyes, based on everything I've heard, I want you to understand something. You're not being judged for struggling. You're being recognized for surviving. Monica's eyes shimmered. But the judge wasn't finished. Still, he said, looking at her steadily, these citations exist. They are real. And they have consequences. But consequences can be fair. They can acknowledge context. And context is everything. He tapped the fine summary with his pen. The city is owed $600, but you are not $600 worth of irresponsibility. He paused, letting those words settle. I'm reducing your fines to $50, payable within 90 days. A gasp whispered through the gallery. Someone gave a soft, approving nod. Someone else murmured, good. Monica's hand flew to her mouth. Your Honor. I thank you. Thank you so much. Her voice cracked and she looked away, embarrassed by her own gratitude. But the judge shook his head gently. No thanks necessary. You've been carrying too much for too long. He waited until she regained her composure, then his tone shifted. A new weight entered his voice, a different kind of responsibility. Now, he said, turning toward Caleb, it's time to address the young man beside you. Caleb stiffened. The judge raised a finger toward the center aisle. Caleb Reyes, step forward. Alone. Monica hesitated, but the judge's eyes reassured her. He's safe. This is correction, not punishment. She gently released Caleb's shoulder. The boy stepped to the podium alone. For the first time in his life, he looked small. Judge Caprio leaned forward, elbows resting on the bench. Caleb, earlier today I asked you to repeat the things you said about your mother. That wasn't to embarrass you. It was so you could hear your own words clearly, maybe for the first time. Caleb nodded faintly. But now we need to talk about something deeper, the judge continued. Something that goes beyond parking tickets. He interlaced his fingers. Caleb, how often do you see your father? Every other weekend, Caleb mumbled. Sometimes. And when he shows up, the judge said carefully. How does he talk about your mother? Caleb hesitated. His eyes flicked toward Monica, then back to the judge. He says Mom complains about money, that she makes things harder than they need to be. He says she just wants attention. Monica closed her eyes, swallowing pain that wasn't new, but hearing it spoken aloud wounded her all over again. The judge's voice softened. Caleb, do you believe your father when he says those things? Caleb hesitated. I used to. You used to, the judge repeated. And what about now? A long silence. Then Caleb said, barely above a whisper, I don't know. Narrator to the viewers. There it was. The moment a child realizes the adults in his life aren't telling the same story, and he must choose which version to believe. Judge Caprio leaned back. Caleb, let me explain something important. Your father buys you expensive shoes, a phone, video games. Those things feel good, don't they? Caleb nodded carefully. But tell me this, who wakes you up for school? My mom, Caleb admitted. Who packs your lunch? Who cooks dinner? Who buys groceries? Who washes your clothes? Helps you with homework? Drives you places? My mom. Who shows up every single day? Caleb's voice cracked. Mom. The judge nodded. Exactly. Gifts are not parenting. Presence is. Caleb's eyes brimmed. And your mother, the judge continued, glancing warmly at Monica, is more present than many parents combined. Monica wiped tears silently. Then the judge's tone shifted again, gaining a sharper edge. Caleb, it's my responsibility, not just as a judge, but as an adult in this community to help correct behavior before it becomes character. And right now, you're standing at a crossroads. Caleb's throat bobbed as he swallowed. That is why I'm ordering community service, the judge said firmly. Not as a punishment, but as an education. You will spend time around people who have lived long enough to value kindness over possessions, humility over pride, effort over excuses. Caleb looked terrified, but not angry, and that mattered. During these 10 Saturdays, the judge said, you will serve meals, assist seniors, clean tables, and speak respectfully to every single person in that center. Not because you owe them something, but because you owe yourself the chance to grow. Caleb wiped his nose with his sleeve. Yes, Your Honor. And Caleb, Caprio added, you owe your mother better. Caleb turned, looking at Monica with a face crumpled by guilt. She didn't scold him. She didn't reproach him. She simply laid a hand on his shoulder light, trembling, full of love. He leaned into it, narrator to the audience. That touch was the whole story. A mother's hand, a child's leaning, a bridge rebuilding itself in real time. The judge waited for the moment to settle, then spoke again. Officer Grant, he said, please hand Miss Reyes her son's phone. Grant did so. Caprio nodded at Monica. You may decide when or if he earns the privilege of having it back. Caleb didn't protest. He accepted it like a truth he had long avoided. Finally, the judge closed the file. This hearing will resume with follow-up instructions after a brief recess. Miss Reyes, Caleb, please take a seat. Together. They did. Mother and son sat side by side closer than when they'd entered, closer than in months, maybe years. As the courtroom settled, one thing had become unmistakably clear. Justice had not just been served. It had begun healing. When the court reconvened, the room felt different, calmer, as if the air itself had been rearranged. Monica and Caleb returned to the podium, standing side by side. But this time, Caleb stood a little closer. His shoulders were lower. His gaze dropped in a mixture of shame and attention. Every sign of swagger had faded into something quieter, more raw, more reachable. Judge Caprio adjusted his glasses, tapped his pen once, and said, "Let's proceed." But before turning back to the case, he looked directly at Caleb. "Young man, do you understand what comes next?" Caleb swallowed. "Yes, Your Honor." "I'm not sure you do," the judge said gently, "because what I'm about to assign to you is not a penalty. It's a responsibility, and it has the power to change more than just your attitude." He slid a packet of papers toward the edge of the bench, signaling for Ms. Harper to deliver them. "This," Caprio continued, "is your community service assignment, 30 hours at the Elmwood Senior Community Center. You will report every Saturday morning at 9 o'clock, stay until noon, and complete every task assigned to you by the supervisors there. This schedule will repeat for 10 weeks. Caleb accepted the papers with trembling hands. 10 weeks. "Yes," the judge said firmly, 10 weeks. Because real understanding takes time. Respect takes time. And true change, takes time. Caleb's head dropped. "But the two have basketball on Saturdays, and your mother has had responsibilities every day for the past 11 years, Caprio replied, not unkindly. She never once got to say, "But I have plans." She showed up anyway. The gallery murmured in agreement. Monica placed a gentle hand on Caleb's back. He didn't pull away this time. The judge continued, "You will help with meals. You will assist residents. You will fold linens, clean tables, and talk with the people there. You will learn from them, and you will see what real struggle looks like and what real gratitude feels like." Caleb nodded slowly. "Yes, Your Honor. And if you miss a single Saturday without a valid reason," the judge added, "the hours will be extended. Is that clear?" "Yes, Your Honor." Only after Caleb answered did Judge Caprio turn back to Monica. "Miss Reyes, if you need help coordinating transportation or childcare for your younger child during these weekends, the court can assist." Monica blinked in surprise. "No, Your Honor, thank you." "Saku can manage." "You've been managing too much alone," Caprio said. "Let this be a shared effort." Monica lowered her head, overwhelmed by the unexpected grace. Then the judge picked up Caleb's phone, now powered off, screen dark, and held it up. "Caleb, what you did with this device earlier was a problem. Your phone is not a shield. It is not a weapon. It is not a shortcut to escape consequences. It is a tool, and tools require responsibility." He handed the phone to Monica. "It belongs to your mother now. She will decide when you're ready to earn it back." Caleb didn't argue. He simply nodded. And that, perhaps, was the clearest sign yet that something had shifted inside him. Narrator to the audience. The moment an entitled child stops fighting is not the moment he gives up. It's the moment he realizes life is bigger than his wants. Judge Caprio took a slow breath before speaking again, but this time his voice took on a different tone, heavier, sharper. The tone he saves for a message meant to echo far beyond the courtroom walls. "This next part," he said, "is for the record and for someone who is not in this courtroom today." He looked past Monica and Caleb, past the benches, as if staring directly through the camera lens into the living room of a man watching from afar. "Caleb's father," he said clearly. "Wherever you are, I want you to hear this." A hush fell over the room. "You're 5 months behind on child support. That is a fact, but your influence on your son is not behind. It is very active, too active. You have taught him that money is love, that gifts are presents, that weekends are enough to replace the weight a mother carries daily." He paused, letting the words sink deep. "You've taught him that disrespect is acceptable, as long as it comes wrapped in new sneakers. That talking down to his mother is justified because she can't afford luxuries, and that showing up twice a month with a shopping bag counts as parenting." He looked directly at Caleb, but his words were still aimed straight at the absent father. "That ends today." People in the gallery nodded, murmuring under their breath. This child's entitlement is not his fault. It is an inheritance he did not choose, but it is one he will not continue. He turned back to Caleb. And so, 10 Saturdays, to learn humility, to learn gratitude, to learn what it means to show up instead of show off. Caleb wiped a tear with his sleeve. Do you understand why you're being assigned this service? Caleb nodded. Because I was disrespectful, and I need to learn. And because your mother deserves better, the judge added gently. She deserves peace. And your future deserves balance. Caleb's voice cracked. Yes, Your Honor. Good. Judge Caprio looked at Monica again. Miss Reyes, you have shown grace today under circumstances that would break many parents. You have been patient, honest, and committed to raising your son with integrity, despite adversity, despite absence, and despite narrative rewriting by those who do not carry the same weight. Monica pressed a hand to her chest. Thank you, Your Honor. You're doing well, he said. And now you will have help. He tapped the file once more, signaling closure. This court is adjourned for today. Please see Ms. Harper for your payment plan. Caleb, your first service day begins this Saturday at 9 a.m. Sharp at the Elmwood Senior Community Center. Do not be late. Caleb nodded. I won't. Good, the judge said softly, almost warmly. I'll see both of you again in 10 weeks. The gavel came down. A small sound, but its impact was seismic. Narrator to the audience. Some rulings change bank accounts. Some rulings change futures. Today's ruling changed a boy. When they stepped outside the courthouse, Providence air crisp with early autumn, Monica walked ahead for a moment, as she always did, leading, guiding, carrying. But then she stopped. Caleb wasn't trailing behind. He was right next to her, hands in pockets, head lowered, step small. He looked up and said, barely above a whisper, Mom, I'm sorry. And for the first time since he'd spoken those words in the courtroom, he meant them with his whole heart. Monica wrapped an arm around him, not to restrain him, not to correct him, but simply to hold him. Because for the first time in a long time, he was holding her back. Narrator with a quiet smile. 10 Saturdays were waiting, but the first step had already been taken. The Elmwood Senior Community Center sat on the corner of Cranston Street, a brick building softened by time, sunlight, and decades of laughter echoing through its hallways. Its paint was chipped in places, its sign slightly faded, but the warmth inside was unmistakable. It smelled of fresh coffee, lavender lotion, warm soup, and memories. On Caleb's first Saturday, he stood outside the center, with his hands buried deep in the pockets of his hoodie. His stomach twisted, his hair ruffled in the cool morning breeze. 9 o'clock felt earlier than it ever had on a weekend. Monica stood beside him, quieter than usual. She hadn't lectured him, hadn't reminded him to behave. She simply walked him there, kissed the top of his head, and whispered, "Do your best." Then she left. For the first time, Caleb had to walk into a place without the comfort of his phone or the confidence of borrowed bravado. Just himself, just the consequences of his own choices. He stepped inside. The lobby was alive with gentle chaos, wheelchairs moving, volunteers greeting residents, nurses checking blood pressure, and 2 elderly women arguing about who cheated at bingo the night before. A supervisor in a navy polo looked up. "You must be Caleb," he nodded. "Yes, sir." "I'm Mr. Alden," the supervisor said, extending a hand. "Welcome to Elmwood. You'll start with breakfast setup. Follow me." Caleb followed him into a dining hall filled with round tables, draped in soft blue cloths. Sunlight streamed through large windows, making dust particles dance in the air like slow-moving sparks. "Gloves," Mr. Alden instructed. "We set out utensils, napkins, water pitchers, and always greet residents kindly. They like feeling seen." Caleb nodded again, slipping on gloves. The first few minutes were awkward. His steps were stiff, his greetings forced. His hands trembled as he arranged forks and spoons. Then he felt a tap on his elbow. He turned to find a petite woman with silver hair curled meticulously, wearing a floral sweater and too much perfume, sweet, powdery, nostalgic. "Honey," she said, squinting at him, "are you new?" "Yes, ma'am. I'm Mrs. Evans." She straightened proudly. "I'm 91, but my doctor says I have the heart of a 50-year-old and the stubbornness of a teenager." Caleb cracked a tiny smile. "Nice to meet you." She leaned closer, conspiratorially. "I don't bite. Not unless you steal my pudding." He laughed a quiet, startled sound he didn't expect from himself, and Mrs. Evans patted his arm. "You'll fit in just fine." By mid-morning, he'd already made his first mistake. While helping carry a tray of hot oatmeal bowls, Caleb tripped on the corner of a rug. The tray tilted. A bowl wobbled and spilled down the sleeve of Mr. Harold Whitaker, a 76-year-old Korean War veteran with bushy eyebrows and the posture of a retired general. "Oh no, I'm sorry," Caleb gasped, frozen. Mr. Whitaker looked down at his oatmeal-covered shirt, then slowly raised his eyes. His stare was sharp, intense-like he was waiting to see whether Caleb would run or stay. "Young man," he said slowly, "what do we do when we make a mess?" Caleb swallowed. "Clean it up." "That's right. Now grab some towels." Caleb rushed into the supply closet and returned with handfuls of paper towels. He dabbed gingerly at the oatmeal. "Not like you're petting a scared cat," Whitaker grunted. "Firm. Get it done." Caleb nodded, wiping more confidently. "Yes, sir." When he finished, he glanced up nervously. "I really am sorry." Whitaker studied him. Then he gave a curt nod. "Good. Now bring me another bowl. And this time, hold the tray steady." Caleb hurried to do exactly that. It was his first lesson of the day. Apologies mattered, but correction mattered more. Narrator to the audience. Real growth doesn't happen when everything goes right. It happens right after we spill the oatmeal. As the weeks rolled on, Caleb began arriving earlier. The center's atmosphere, slow, warm, grounding, did something to him. The noise inside his mind quieted. The need to posture faded. By week 2, he was setting tables without being asked. By week 3, he stayed 15 minutes after his shift to help a resident locate a missing photo album. By week 4, he learned how to fold linens perfectly, a crisp, respectful triangle that Mrs. Evans applauded dramatically for. And by week 5, something happened that shifted everything. It was a Wednesday afternoon. Caleb was excused early from school due to teacher conferences. Monica couldn't pick him up for 3 hours, so she called the center and asked if he could go there until her shift ended. Caleb walked in hesitantly, still unsure if he belonged on a weekday. When Mr. Alden saw him, he smiled warmly. "Look who it is, our Saturday soldier." The nickname made Caleb stand a little taller. In the rec room, he found Mr. Whitaker sitting alone at a card table polishing an old wooden chess set with careful strokes. "Hey," Caleb said softly. Whitaker grunted in acknowledgement. "You play?" "A little. Sit." Caleb sat. For the next hour, the room faded away. Whitaker taught him openings, traps, sacrifices. Caleb absorbed every word, every correction, every strategy. It wasn't just about chess. It was about thinking differently, about patience, about consequences. "You rush your moves," Whitaker told him. "Same way you rush your mouth. Slow down." Caleb nodded deeply, letting the lesson land in places he didn't even know needed teaching. But the biggest turning point came at the end of week 6. The center had a small celebration for spring birthdays. A long table was decorated with pastel balloons and cupcakes. Residents laughed. Music played softly from a portable speaker. Caleb helped pass out cupcakes. He didn't realize he was smiling until Mrs. Evans pointed at him dramatically. "Look at that. He does have teeth." The residents laughed. Caleb's face flushed red, but he laughed with them. Later, while wiping down tables, he overheard 2 staff members chatting. "That Reyes kid is a good one of them said. "Rough edges, but a good heart." "Yeah," the other replied. "His mom raised him right. He just needed a reminder." Caleb paused mid-wipe. His throat tightened. His eyes burned. A reminder. Not a replacement. Not a criticism. Not a failure. A reminder. It was the first time he saw himself through someone else's eyes, through kinder eyes. Then came week 7. A complication, a test, a crossroads. Caleb was serving lunch when the front door burst open. A gust of cool air swept into the room, and behind it came a familiar silhouette. Tall, confident, smelling of expensive cologne and entitlement. Brandon Hale, Caleb's father, heads turned. Even the residents sensed something charged entering the room. Brandon strutted toward Caleb with a grin too wide to be sincere. "Hey, champ," Brandon announced, pulling a shoebox from behind his back. "Got you something." Caleb froze. The room quieted. Brandon placed the box on the table with a flourish. Limited edition. Dropped yesterday. Hard to get. A few residents exchanged glances, not impressed, not intimidated, just aware. Brandon slapped Caleb lightly on the shoulder. "Come on, kiddo. Let's head out. I'll take you to lunch." "You don't need to waste your time here." Caleb blinked. "Time in the middle of my shift." Brandon scoffed. "Shift?" "Caleb, this is volunteer fluff. Play pretend work. Let's go." "I didn't take off work to watch you wipe tables." Mr. Whitaker, seated nearby, lifted his head. His expression hardened. Mrs. Evans gasped softly, covering her mouth. Caleb stared at the shoes. They were beautiful. They were tempting. They were everything he used to think mattered. But then he looked around, at the tables he had set, the people he had helped, the room that had accepted him, the place that had softened him. He looked back at his father, at the shiny exterior, at the emptiness beneath it. Then he shook his head. "No, Dad. I need to stay." Brandon laughed, stunned. "You're joking, right?" Caleb swallowed. "I have work to do. Real work." Brandon's smile dissolved. "Caleb, I'm your father. I'm telling you." "You're here 2 days a month," Caleb interrupted, voice trembling. "Mom shows up every day." Silence. Pure, crystalline silence. Brandon's jaw tightened. "This is your mother talking." "No," Caleb whispered. "It's me." Brandon stared at him for a long, furious second. Then he grabbed the shoebox and stormed out, the door slamming behind him so loudly it rattled the windows. No one spoke for almost 10 seconds. Then Mr. Whitaker cleared his throat. "Well," he muttered, "that's one hell of a move, kid." And for the first time in a long time, Caleb felt proud. Not because of what he owned, but because of what he chose. Narrator quietly to the audience. Some victories come in sneakers, some come in silence. This one came in a slammed door, and a boy finally standing tall. Week 8 arrived with the soft warmth of late spring, when sunlight lingered a little longer in the sky, and the seniors at Elmwood seemed to move with a touch more ease, as if even their bones welcomed the change in weather. By now, Caleb was no longer the hesitant boy who shuffled into the building, with his hood pulled tight around his face. He walked in with purpose, holding the door for residents, greeting staff members with a polite good morning, and putting on gloves before anyone asked. But despite how far he'd come, the tension lingering from his father's outburst still hung inside him, like a bruise that hadn't fully healed. Every time he wiped down a table or set out silverware, a flicker of doubt surfaced. What if I made the wrong choice? What if Dad never forgives me? He didn't voice those fears, not yet. But someone noticed anyway. On a quiet Wednesday afternoon, Caleb wandered into the rec room to find Mr. Whitaker sitting at the chess table, the wooden pieces already arranged in their starting positions. The old man didn't look up. "Sit," he grunted. Caleb sat. They played in silence for several moves. Caleb pushed a pawn. Whitaker countered. Caleb developed a knight. Whitaker castled. It wasn't until Caleb foolishly sacrificed a bishop that Whitaker finally spoke. "You're distracted," he said. Caleb shrugged. "Just thinking." Whitaker snorted. "That's your first mistake. Thinking too much about things you can't fix." Caleb frowned. "What if I can fix it?" "Your father," Whitaker said plainly, eyes sharp. "Son, I'm 76. If there's one thing I know, it's that you can't fix people who don't want fixing. Caleb shifted uncomfortably. I don't want him to be mad at me forever. He's not mad at you, the old man said, scooting a rook across the board. He's mad he lost control. Big difference. Caleb blinked, but he said I was choosing Mom over him. You weren't choosing your mom, Whitaker replied. She was already the one choosing you. The words landed like a quiet thunder. Deep, heavy, true. Caleb leaned back in his chair. Did you ever disrespect your mom? Whitaker's jaw tightened. He moved a pawn before answering. Once, he said. I was 15. Thought I was big stuff. Told her she didn't know anything about real life. What happened? Whitaker smirked. My old man overheard, took me outside, made me apologize to her in front of the entire block. Caleb's eyes widened. Seriously? Dead serious. The old man locked eyes with him, and it worked. Never disrespected her again. The shame cured me. He nudged a pawn forward. Check. Caleb froze. He'd been so wrapped in the story he hadn't noticed his pieces falling apart. He made a desperate move. Whitaker immediately countered. Checkmate, the old man said. Caleb groaned. How are you always this good? Whitaker leaned back with a satisfied sigh. Because I've been losing longer than you've been alive. You learn more from the losses. For the first time in days, Caleb felt something lift inside his chest. The next Saturday, Caleb arrived 10 minutes early. When he entered the dining hall, Mrs. Evans waved him over excitedly. Oh, thank goodness, she declared dramatically. Clarence tried to set the tables this morning, and he put the forks on the right side. Anarchy. Clarence, sitting nearby, grumbled, Forks belong wherever forks want to be. Caleb laughed and began rearranging the settings. And something strange happened. Residents started drifting toward him, not to criticize, not to correct, but simply to talk. Mrs. Rivera wanted to show him her grandson's graduation pictures. Mr. Dawson asked him to help with his hearing aid. Two elderly sisters bickered about which one he liked more. Caleb answered questions, shared jokes, listened patiently. He felt unexpectedly useful, more useful than any new shoes had ever made him feel. But the real transformation came during week 9. Narrator softly, invitingly, to the audience, every story has a turning point. This one arrived on a Thursday afternoon, wrapped not in conflict, but connection. Caleb's school had early dismissal again. Monica arranged for him to go to Elmwood. When he arrived, Mr. Alden gestured toward the outdoor garden patio. Why don't you help the residents water the plants today? He suggested. They love having a young set of hands out there. Caleb stepped outside. The sun warmed his skin, and the scent of soil and fresh blooms filled the air. Several residents sat beneath umbrellas, chatting, while others tended to raised garden beds. And there, in a wheelchair near the largest planter, sat Mrs. Evanshire Hare, pinned up, her sweater covered in tiny embroidered daisies. Come here, sweetheart, she said with a smile. I want to show you something. Caleb walked over. She pointed to a small, fragile plant with pale green leaves. This, she said, is a moonflower seedling. It blooms only at night. Most people don't even notice it. Caleb knelt beside her. Why not? Because they're too busy looking for daytime flowers. She patted his hand. But sometimes, the best things grow quietly, after dark, when no one's paying attention. Caleb stared at the little plant, understanding more than the metaphor itself. It's like you, honey, she added. You're growing where it counts. Doesn't matter if your daddy sees it. You know, and we know. A lump formed in Caleb's throat. He nodded, blinking back emotion he didn't want to show too openly. Then Mrs. Evans touched his chin gently and said, You're becoming a good young man. Your mother should be proud. Caleb swallowed hard. I hope she is. She is, Mrs. Evans said firmly. Trust an old woman when she tells you, mothers see everything, and your mother has been waiting a long time for you to see her. Caleb looked down, feeling the truth wash over him. He had seen his father's gifts. He had seen the shiny distractions. He had seen what was easy. But he hadn't seen his mother. Not truly. Not until now. Suddenly the garden felt like a sanctuary, and the seniors felt like guardians guiding him back to the path he'd wandered from. Narrator warmly, like a smile you can hear. We talk about kids shaping their futures, but sometimes a community shapes a child first. By week 10, Caleb was unrecognizable from the boy who had first walked into that courtroom. He no longer dreaded Saturdays. He anticipated them. He no longer counted hours. He forgot about them. He no longer saw seniors as strangers. He saw them as friends. But the greatest sign of all came one Saturday as he helped Mrs. Rivera carry her knitting basket. "Caleb," she asked, "does your father know you volunteer here?" Caleb paused. He did. Once. And what did he say? The boy hesitated. Then he answered truthfully. He told me this place wasn't worth my time. Mrs. Rivera stopped walking. Her expression softened. She lifted his chin gently. Then he doesn't know you at all. Caleb didn't have an answer, but he didn't need one. The last 15 minutes of his final Saturday were spent helping Mr. Whitaker win yet again a round of chess. As they packed up the pieces, Whitaker looked him dead in the eye. "You did good, kid." Caleb smiled shyly. "Thanks for everything." Whitaker grunted. "Don't get mushy on me. Go make your mama proud." And for the first time in his life, Caleb realized he wanted to. Not because he felt forced, not because he feared punishment, but because he had learned who deserved his respect, who had earned it, and who had shown up for him every single day. Narrator with the soft triumph of a closing chapter. 10 Saturdays had passed, but the biggest change had already taken root. Caleb Reyes had grown quietly, steadily, like a moonflower waiting for its night. 10 weeks had passed. 10 Saturdays of early mornings, folded linens, laughter-filled dining halls, chess games that ended in inevitable checkmates, and quiet lessons whispered between generations. By the time Caleb and Monica Reyes stepped into Providence Municipal Court again, spring had matured into early summer. The air was warm. The sun was bright. And something in Caleb, something in the way he walked, stood, breathed, was undeniably different. He didn't slouch. He didn't drag his feet. He didn't bury his hands in his pockets. He walked beside his mother, not behind her. Ms. Harper looked up as they approached the podium. Even her expression softened. She'd seen countless follow-up hearings, but there was something special about seeing a child return with clearer eyes and straighter shoulders. "Follow-up review," she announced. "Case 24-17, PK 22231. Reyes matter." Judge Caprio adjusted his glasses, eyes warm as he regarded the pair. "Miss Reyes." "Caleb." He nodded. "Welcome back." "Good morning, Your Honor," Monica said softly. "Good morning," Caleb added. Respectful, steady, not needing to be prompted. The judge flipped open the updated folder. Inside were the reports from Elmwood Senior Community Center. Week-by-week notes penned by Mr. Alden, Mrs. Evans, Mr. Whitaker, and other staff. The top page held a bold handwritten sentence, "Attitude transformed, behavior exemplary, a credit to the program." Judge Caprio smiled, subtle but proud. "Well, Caleb, looks like we have a lot to talk about." The boy swallowed nervously but lifted his chin. "Yes, Your Honor." "Let's begin," the judge said, folding his hands. "You completed all 30 hours." "Yes, Your Honor. I actually did a few extra, just to help out." A small wave of murmured approval rolled through the gallery. "And what?" the judge asked. "Did you learn from your time at Elmwood?" Caleb took a breath. His hands tightened at his sides. Then he spoke not as a child rehearsing a line, not as a boy trying to impress a judge, but as someone who had lived an experience deeply. "I learned that helping people feels good," he said. "Not because someone's watching, but because you can see the difference right away. Like when I help Mrs. Evans reach her knitting bag, or when I push Mr. Dawson's wheelchair to the garden. They always smile. They thank me. It feels real. The judge nodded. Go on. Caleb's voice grew stronger. I learned that the people at the senior center don't care what kind of shoes you have or what phone you use. They only care whether you show up and whether you're kind. They care whether you listen. And I realized that I wasn't doing that for my mom. I wasn't listening. I wasn't showing up. Monica's breath caught. Tears glistened at the corners of her eyes. Caleb looked up at her, full of remorse and love. I thought Dad buying me stuff meant he cared more. But now I know Mom does everything. She's the one who works late. She's the one who pays for food and the house and clothes and school. She's the one who's always there. And I treated her like she wasn't enough, but she's more than enough. The room grew quiet, emotion thickening the air. Even Judge Caprio took a moment before responding. His voice was steady but gentle. Caleb, that is the clarity I hoped you would find. He glanced at Monica. Miss Reyes, has there been improvement at home? Monica smiled through tears. Yes, Your Honor, more than I ever expected. He helps with dishes. He helps his little sister with homework. He hasn't argued with me about chores in weeks. He even put his phone away during dinner. On purpose. A soft chuckle rippled through the courtroom. Caleb turned red, but he didn't look embarrassed, only proud. And what? The judge continued. Happens now when your father buys you something and speaks poorly about your mother. Caleb straightened. I tell him, thank you for the gift, but that Mom takes care of what I need, not just what I want. A flicker of pride appeared in Caprio's eyes. That, he said, is a powerful answer. He stamped the corner of the form. Community service obligation fulfilled. A wave of relief washed over Monica. She exhaled shakily, a weight lifting from her shoulders. Then the judge turned to her with a soft smile. Miss Reyes, your son's phone, should you wish to return it, is yours to give back at your discretion. Monica nodded. Thank you, Your Honor. But before she could slip the phone from her purse, Caprio raised a finger. One more matter. Caleb blinked. Yes, sir. The senior center contacted the court, the judge said, flipping to a letter. They wanted you to know that the residents asked for you by name, and they're offering you a paid summer position. 15 hours a week, working directly with the residents. The shock on Caleb's face was immediate. They want me to work there. They do, the judge confirmed. They say you bring kindness, patience, and a sense of calm to the room. Caleb's eyes widened. He turned to Monica, silently asking for permission. She nodded slowly, tears returning. If you want it, baby, take it. Caleb nodded back. Yes, Your Honor, I'd like to. A proud smile curved across Caprio's face. Then it's yours. Miss Reyes, the center will contact you about the schedule. Thank you, Monica whispered, hand pressed to her heart. You both, the judge said softly, should be proud. You came in here fractured. You're leaving whole. He lifted his gavel. This review is concluded. The gavel fell gentle, final, affirming. But the story didn't end there. Narrator quietly, warmly to the audience. Courtrooms don't heal everything, but sometimes they give families the space to start healing themselves. That afternoon, Judge Frank Caprio sat in his chambers finishing paperwork. Ms. Harper knocked lightly and entered with an envelope. Your Honor, she said. Miss Reyes left this for you. He opened it carefully. Inside was a handwritten note. Your Honor, thank you for seeing what I couldn't see. Thank you for giving my son a chance to understand my love instead of resenting it. Thank you for helping us grow again. We won't forget this. Monica Reyes attached was a photograph. Caleb and Monica standing in the center's garden. Caleb holding a watering can. Monica laughing at something out of frame. Both wearing volunteer badges. Both glowing with peace. Caprio had not seen in them 10 weeks earlier. The judge smiled and pinned the photo to his bulletin board, alongside dozens of other families who had once stood uncertain in his courtroom and left hopeful. Later that summer, Caleb visited Elmwood during a weekday shift. He found Mr. Whitaker sitting at their usual chess table, waiting. "You come to lose again," Whitaker grumbled. Caleb grinned. "Only if you're ready to lose, too." They set up the board. Halfway through the game, Whitaker looked at him and asked, "So, you still got that fancy phone your dad bought you?" Caleb shrugged. "Yeah, but it stays in my backpack most of the time." "Smart kid." "I just don't need it as much anymore," Caleb admitted. Whitaker smirked. "That's because you figured out something most adults haven't." "What's that?" Caleb asked, moving his knight. Whitaker moved his rook. "That respect," the old man said, "is worth more than anything you can buy." Caleb nodded. "Yeah, I'm starting to learn that." Whitaker moved his queen. Checkmate. Caleb laughed. "How do you always win?" "Same reason you're starting to," the old man replied, leaning back. Experience. That evening, Monica picked her son up from the center. Caleb climbed into the passenger seat with an ease she hadn't seen in years. "How was your visit?" she asked. "Good," he said. "I lost at chess again. You'll get him one day." "Maybe." Caleb smiled, looking out the window. "But I kind of like losing to him. I learned stuff." Monica reached over, squeezing his hand. "I'm proud of you." Caleb looked down, embarrassed but glowing. "Thanks, Mom." She handed him the phone from her purse. "You earned it back." He stared at it for a moment. Then he tucked it into his backpack. "Maybe later," he said softly. "I don't really need it right now." Monica's heart tightened with tenderness. As they drove home, the world felt different. Softer. Warmer. And behind them, in Judge Caprio's chambers, the photo of mother and son remained pinned to the board, another quiet reminder that accountability and compassion can coexist, and that respect isn't taught in one hearing. It's rebuilt one Saturday at a time. Life rarely hands us perfect families. It hands us imperfect people doing their best, sometimes failing, sometimes learning too late, sometimes learning just in time. Caleb's story is a reminder that love isn't measured in gifts or money. It's measured in presence, patience, humility, and the willingness to change. His transformation didn't happen in a courtroom. It happened in every small moment. He chose kindness over pride, gratitude over entitlement, and understanding over judgment. And maybe that's the lesson for all of us. We become better when we choose to see the people who've been there all along. Tell us in the comments. Did Caleb deserve this second chance? And have you ever had a moment that changed you like this? Don't forget to subscribe for more powerful human courtroom stories.